Hey guys, so today's video is going to be a little bit different to my previous recaps. As you can see, my makeup is finished and applied, and I'm sure you've seen the title of this video. I'm doing a recap of the film Believe Me, The Abduction of Lisa McVey, which came out in 2018. This is probably quite out of left field considering I've done like campy horror movies from the 50s and even a couple of older ones like Frankenstein and King Kong. But doing a recap of this film has been on my to-do list for a while. It's just such an incredible story. It surprises me that this story isn't more well known than what it is. Perhaps it is now. At least at the time that I saw this movie a couple of years ago for the first time, I had never heard of this story. So the reason why I've got my makeup done now is because this film is based on a true story with real people, and I feel like while I'm doing my makeup I'm distracted and I sometimes make jokes and I sometimes feel a bit sassy as I talk while doing my makeup, and I just feel like I wouldn't be giving this story the attention it deserves, the seriousness it deserves as well. And I think this is a good springboard into the disclaimer. This film does depict some pretty heavy topics. It depicts murder, it depicts sexual assault on a minor, and again, this film is based on a true story. It's based on true events, real people, but it's just such an incredible story. And this is a Lifetime movie. I know a lot of people like to make fun of Lifetime movies. However, this one, it truly does do the story justice, in my opinion. After I watched this film for the first time, I did research the actual case, and I found that the movie is pretty much spot on to what actually happened. When we get to the end of the recap, I will explain one key thing that the movie told differently than the actual events, but everything else is pretty much spot on. So the movie starts with our titular character, Lisa McVey. She is 17 years old and she works at a donut shop. She's working a late shift and she rides her bike home that night. As she's riding her bike home, she notices a black car parked on the side of the road, and it's giving her the creeps a little bit because the engine's running, the lights are on, and the driver is clearly sitting in the car, just kind of sitting there watching. We can see that she lives with her grandmother and her grandmother's boyfriend named Morris. It's clear that Morris has been assaulting her, and if that wasn't awful enough, Lisa's grandmother just allows it to happen. In fact, she may even encourage it. So Lisa's younger sister Laurie lives with their mother. They talk frequently on the phone, however. We quickly learned that Lisa does not have a good relationship with their mother, which is why she lives with her grandmother instead. So she works another shift at the donut shop, and I thought I would just throw this clip in here as it shows how good she is with customers, including the grumpy ones.
Finally?
I'm sorry, sir.
You should have more people working.
Yeah, I know, we're understaffed, but that's no excuse. So please tell me what you like and I'll serve you up right quick.
It's too late for that. I've been waiting forever.
No, you're right, sir. No one should have to wait that long for a donut. It's just downright un-American.
All right, could I get a apple fritter, please, and a tuna salad?
You got it. And
it's like she just knows exactly what to say to calm somebody down or to turn a situation around so that, you know, maybe that person isn't so cross anymore. So once again, she's riding her bike home. It's 2 a.m. Her shift has just finished. She's riding her bike past a car park and she notices the black car there again. It's a black Dodge Magnum. Its lights are on, its engine is running, and she finds that a bit odd. This time she can't really see a driver inside. All of a sudden, a man comes out of nowhere, grabs her off her bike. It's the owner of the black Magnum, and he drags her inside his car and sexually assaults her. He then blindfolds her, reclines the passenger seat so that she can't be seen, and drives her to his apartment. He also threatens to shoot her if she screams or tries to run away. During this car ride, she tries to stay calm and she tries to make herself aware of her surroundings. She tries to get a good look at the car. I'm sure some of you have probably worn a blindfold before. Like if you lean your head back, sometimes you can see a little sliver from beneath the blindfold, and this is what Lisa is doing. She's also reclined back, so this kind of helps her see her surroundings. She gets glimpses out of the window to see roughly where they're driving. This is how she identifies that the car she's in is a Magnum. He leads her upstairs to his apartment, she manages, again, peeking through that little sliver beneath her blindfold, she does see that the stairs are covered with green carpet. She also counts that there are 22 stairs. I'm mentioning all these things because they will be important later. She also notices he puts his keys and gun down on the kitchen counter with his left hand. He makes her undress again and forces her into the bathroom. He puts her in the shower and washes her and then assaults her again. Meanwhile, Lisa's grandmother reports her missing. However, she does tell the police officer that Lisa has probably just run away and could be with some boy. A police officer visits Lisa's mother's home in the off chance that Lisa may have run away there. Laurie tells the police officer that Lisa wouldn't just run away without telling her, and Laurie believes that something has happened to Lisa. So back at the kidnapper's apartment. Now this next thing I'm going to say is going to sound absolutely horrible, so I will do my absolute best to explain what I mean. As I mentioned earlier, Lisa has endured an unimaginable amount of abuse at the hands of her grandmother's boyfriend. Perhaps when the assaults first started, maybe she was fighting back and resisting him. They don't really explain that. This is just my opinion. Lisa would have then, I guess, for lack of a better word, adapted to her situation, as awful as this sounds, and eventually would have resisted fighting Morris. The reason I say that is because this is a situation that she has no control over, and at least if she doesn't fight back or doesn't resist what Morris is doing, she has some control over a situation that could be even worse if she was resisting or was fighting back. And I really hope I'm explaining it to the best of my ability. Just because she is not resisting or not fighting back, that does not mean she is giving consent. I want to make that clear. And the reason why I mention this is because it's as if she takes what she has learned from her assault by Morris and applies it to the situation she's in now. As I mentioned earlier, her kidnapper has threatened to kill her, and he continues threatening to kill her if she doesn't do what she's told. So she doesn't fight back, she doesn't resist. She even takes it a step further by apologizing to her kidnapper and says, "I'm sorry that women haven't been very kind to you." She also takes this moment to caress his face in a way that a lover would, but what she's doing is actually trying to figure out how he looks, because again, she's blindfolded. She has no idea what he looks like, but she's trying to make sense of his appearance through her fingertips. She also goes on to sweet talk him and talks to him the way she would if he was her boyfriend. He lets her use the bathroom, and in this moment she takes the blindfold off while she's in there. She tries to look around to see if there's anything noticeable, anything she can take in to remember later. She notices a pair of his sneakers on the floor, and they have a rather unique kangaroo logo on them. She's also very aware of the fact that he could kill her at any moment, you know, that maybe he will go through with his threats and kill her, as he keeps saying. So she presses her fingertips quite firmly on as many surfaces as she can in that bathroom. For example, the toilet bowl, the mirror, the towel rack. Later on, she also places a bobby pin with a couple of strands of her hair in it under his mattress. Then, after 26 hours of being held captive, Lisa's kidnapper drags her out of his apartment and back into his car. Luckily, just before this, Lisa does manage to glimpse underneath her blindfold and look at her kidnapper's clock. The time reads 3:13 a.m. They stop at a service station so her kidnapper can get some fuel, and she decides to leave one last bit of evidence by biting her finger, drawing blood, and wiping it against her car seat. They drive away from the service station and arrive at a park. Lisa's kidnapper drags her out of the car again towards a tree in the park. He threatens to kill her. He's pointing the gun at her. She pleads for her life. He then realizes that he can't bring himself to kill her, so he says, "Wait here for 5 minutes and then you can take your blindfold off." So she just sits there. She's kneeling in front of this tree, and she hears her kidnapper's footsteps gradually die away. She hears the sound of him starting up his car and driving away. At that moment, she takes her blindfold off and she looks up at the tree in front of her. And it's at that moment she knew she was going to survive. Thankfully, Lisa manages to navigate her way back home. She tells her grandmother and Morris that she was kidnapped and raped. However, they do not believe her. Lisa's grandmother still believes that she was out with a boy. Lisa's grandmother calls the police because, as we know, she did report her missing. She needs to tell the police that Lisa's back. So the grandmother tells the police that Lisa is making up a story about being kidnapped, and the police officer she's talking to says, well, we have to question her, we have to interview her, she's a minor and she's claiming to be the victim of a crime, we need to follow procedure. Lisa is taken down to the police station, and the first 3 detectives she speaks to do not believe her story. First and foremost, she doesn't look like an assault victim because she's not covered in lots of injuries or bruises. And her explanation of her kidnapping appears very elaborate because of how many things she took in and remembered. Finally, Sergeant Larry Pinkerton tells her that he promises he will believe her and encourages her to tell him what happened. She mentions the 22 steps covered with green carpet that lead up to the kidnapper's apartment. She also mentions that she was unsure if it was a normal apartment complex or if it was an office building because she was there for 26 hours and she never heard anybody else in the building coming or going, things that you would normally hear if you were in an apartment building. Meanwhile, for the last 6 months, the police have been looking for a serial killer in the area. There have been a number of female victims whose bodies have been found scattered all around Tampa and the surrounding cities and countryside. There are a number of things that link all these victims together. However, the one piece of concrete evidence they have is that all the victims were found with the same red fibers on their clothing. So that's how they know definitively that it's the same person committing all of these murders. Larry is recording Lisa's recount and he's taking notes of everything she's saying. She mentions that it was a Dodge Magnum that her kidnapper was driving. She mentions the red carpet in the car. She mentions that she thinks he's left-handed because he put the gun down on the kitchen counter with his left hand. She also describes his face. Larry thinks Lisa could remember more if she goes under hypnosis. However, because she is under 18, she needs a parent or guardian to give permission. So she calls Lisa's home. Morris ends up answering, and Larry, mistaking Morris for being Lisa's father, is asking for permission to put her under hypnosis, and Morris is declining. Lisa then tells Larry that Morris is not her father, and she goes on to tell him exactly what's been happening at her grandmother's house. This next scene is incredibly satisfying. We finally see Morris arrested and taken away in a cop car. I personally would have loved to have seen the grandmother be taken away as well, considering she knew exactly what was going on and did nothing to stop it. If anything, she was encouraging it, but I digress. Lisa moves out of that toxic household and she stays with another sergeant for a while. She will then move into a safe house later on, and that'll become clear later as to why she does that. Sadly, in the days that followed Lisa's kidnapping, she has not been able to sleep peacefully at all. She keeps waking up with nightmares. She keeps dreaming about her kidnapper as if he's coming back to finish the job. Lisa explains to Larry that she left fingerprints and strands of her hair at her kidnapper's apartment because, like I said earlier, she knew that at any time he would, commit to those threats that he was making and kill her. So she wanted the police to know that she was there. She also was hoping that maybe with all the evidence that she's leaving, perhaps she might be his last victim. She also mentions the clock reading 3:13 a.m. and that they'd been driving for about 20 minutes or so at the time that they'd reached the service station. She then realizes she'd seen the car before. Remember the start of the film, after her first shift to the donut shop, she's riding her bike home. She sees this creepy looking car parked on the side of the road. And it's at that moment that Larry thinks, oh, we know that the serial killer we're looking for stalks his victims first before, like, he doesn't just grab them at random. He actually plans out his next victim. Larry then arranges for Lisa's clothes to be analyzed to see if they have the red fibers on them as well. So this is when Larry takes Lisa to the safe house where there's much more security and she can be safe there. So the lab results come back, and yes, they found the same red fibers on Lisa's clothing as what was on all the other victims' clothing. So Larry tells Lisa that he's pretty sure that her kidnapper is the killer that they're looking for. They take Lisa back to the car park where she was abducted, and she does her best to retrace where they traveled from the car park. She does an excellent job. Although she doesn't pinpoint where his apartment is, she does find the tree at the park where her kidnapper released her, which in turn then gives the police a 2-mile radius of where this guy potentially lives. So now that they've been given this 2-mile radius, Larry starts going through stills from security cameras from service stations in the area. He's cycling through ones that are around roughly 3:35 a.m., which, as you remember, is roughly 20 minutes after 3:13, the time that Lisa saw on the digital clock as they were leaving her kidnapper's apartment. And sure enough, he stumbles across a man who matches Lisa's description of him. So now they have an image of their suspect. Meanwhile, Detective Charlie Wolf is out on patrol. He's looking for this black Magnum. He sees one pulled over and it looks like the driver is trying to pick up a sex worker. Charlie takes a picture of the driver and makes note of the license plate. And we, as the audience, recognize the man as Lisa's kidnapper immediately. They show the photo that Charlie took to Lisa and she successfully identifies him as her kidnapper. The police run the license plate of the car through their system to find out who owns it and where he lives. Bobby Joe Long is arrested outside of a movie theater. The police analyze his car as well as his apartment. Everything Lisa said is spot on. The spot of blood that she left in his car, the 22 steps covered by green carpet leading up to Bobby's apartment, the shoes with the kangaroo logo on them, her fingerprints and hair are also found. The police had been looking for this guy for the last 6 months, and with Lisa's help they tracked him down in 12 days. Lisa is seen sleeping peacefully in Larry's office, and this is the first time in the whole movie we've seen her sleeping peacefully and not waking up from a nightmare. Larry comes in and he gently wakes her up, and he says the words that all of us want to hear. We got him. Lisa's aunt and uncle come and take her to live with them. They had no idea about the abuse she was suffering from at her grandmother's house. Lisa will now live the happy life she's always wanted. The film ends with the real Lisa McVey standing in front of the tree where Bobby Joe Long released her. We learn she became a sheriff's deputy specializing in sex crimes against minors. Lisa and Larry remain great friends, and he still refers to her as the #1 hero of his career. At the time of this film, it came out in 2018, Bobby Joe Long was on death row. And this is the text that appears on screen at the end, that he's on death row. However, in 2019, he was executed via lethal injection, so later airings of this film now have the added text stating that he has now been executed. And that is the end of the film. The real Lisa McVey, who now goes by Lisa McVey Noland, worked closely with the makers of this film. She wanted this film to be made not just so she could tell her story, but she hopes she can help give advice, for lack of a better word, on what to do if any of us are ever kidnapped, and gosh, I hope that never happens to any of us. Now, at the start of this video, I was going to mention a key difference between this movie and the actual events, and the key difference is Larry being the one who thinks that Lisa's kidnapper could be the serial killer that they're looking for, when in actual fact, the day that Lisa met Larry, she gives her initial statement. She goes home that night, she is watching the news, and they're talking about this serial killer that the cops are looking for. And although they didn't give much information, Lisa is the one who hears this and starts thinking, oh, I think my kidnapper is this guy that they're looking for. And she immediately calls Larry again. So I hope you all enjoyed this recap. And if you haven't seen this movie, I highly, highly recommend you see it. It's incredibly well made. It does the story justice, and yeah, this was a really tough, I've seen this movie a few times now, but it was really tough taking my notes. It's just absolutely awful what Lisa went through, and no one should ever have to go through what she went through. But she is like, and at just 17, she was so brave and so smart, and I just can't imagine being in her situation when I was 17. I would not have been as brave or calm as her, you know. She manages to take in so much and remember so much that when she gave her statement to the police, she also was spot on about everything. And, you know, she left evidence, she left her fingerprints, she left a strand of her hair and a bobby pin. She could not have made their job any easier. You know, that it was cut and dry by that point. They had found him. They knew for a fact that they had found him thanks to her. So once again, thank you all so much for watching. Please like the video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will be talking to you all again in my next video. Bye.